Joining us now, Joe DiGenova for our weekly visit. Of course, he's a legal analyst and former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Joe DiGenova, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be with you.
We got to get your opinion on the story that is absolutely dominating the news cycle right now, and of course that is of Edward Snowden, the leaker behind the NSA snooping story that hit last week. Listen, I understand arguments on both sides of this issue, so I want to hear from you. Is this man a hero for leaking this information, or has he done very serious harm to our national security?
Well, he's done very serious harm to our national security, and there's no doubt about it. He is a person who took an oath. He's a government contractor, former CIA employee doing work for NSA under contract, and he's bound by law not to release such information. It is true he gave it to a newspapers, The Guardian and the Washington Post, not to an enemy, but by giving it to them, he gave it to the enemy. He'll be prosecuted. We have an extradition treaty with Hong Kong where he is now, assuming he stays there. There is a CIA station in Hong Kong, as well as FBI agents, so I don't think he's going to be traveling much, but whether or not he's a hero remains to be seen. Certainly if this had happened in the Bush administration, everyone would have claimed he was a hero. Now, of course, he's an enemy of the state. He's Gene Hackman.
Just a quick follow-up on that, because you worked for the Department of Justice and you know what's involved here. What are the mechanisms for somebody like Edward Snowden, if he truly believes that the Constitution is being infringed and that there is way too much power and it's being abused by the government? Are there mechanisms for him to utilize that don't involve going right to the press and just opening it up for the whole world to see?
Oh, absolutely. There's inspectors generals in every one of these institutions, including NSA and CIA. There's no necessity to go to the press. There is the inspector general mechanism. He can also go to Capitol Hill. There are protections for going to the intelligence committees. So there are outlets for this. Going to the press is actually the easy way out.
Well, but, you know, he has said that I did raise this. I talked to my supervisors about this. I raised concerns within the system. And people say, no, it's okay. No, don't worry your little head about it. I mean, this guy, when you listen to him speak, now, I'm not saying that he's a hero. I'm not sure. I think my jury is still out on this. But, I mean, he seems like a very level-headed guy who seems to be not motivated by, you know, trying to make himself a bigger person than he is, that he truly was deeply troubled by these things.
Right. Well, maybe this is work he should not have been doing, number one. Number two, there are avenues, whether he likes them or not. And again, I'm not, the bottom line is, for me, there are laws, and you obey them. And if you want that job, you're going to obey the laws. It is not absolutely clear to me. First of all, this was all legal. According to everything that I have read, this was authorized by Congress, number one. Congress was notified. The Patriot Act was amended. The FISA statute was amended. Judicial officers review these requests to actually go into the data when there is reasonable suspicion or probable cause. But the collection of the data is very troubling and disturbing to many people and should be looked at by Congress. It is not true, as the President said the other day, that Congress was aware of this. Only a few very selected members of Congress under House and Senate rules were advised of this, maybe 10 people tops, not 535 members. So understandably, a lot of members of Congress are very upset because they were not read into these huge collection programs. None of them knew that they were storing all telephone calls, not their content, but the numbers called to and from. And no one knew about the trolling for emails and the content of emails, which is also being stored in massive computers. This is a very serious matter. I think the American people need to understand what is being done in their name. I have no problem with Congress taking a look at this. And I do think that it sits as somewhat ironic that President Obama, who just bashed George Bush when he was a senator and when he was running for president, being an out-of-control person with regard to surveillance, this president has become the snooper-in-chief, the most aggressive, overreaching surveillance programs in the history of the country, and nary a whimper from the left and the press.
But put on your political hat for a moment, because in recent days, I mean, in the last few months, we have seen an attempt to limit our Second Amendment rights. You could argue that these attacks against the Associated Press and against James Rosen were attempts to limit our First Amendment rights, and now we've got what some people are saying is an attack on our Fourth Amendment rights. I mean, these things don't just stand in isolation. When you talk about this young man who's now holed up in a hotel in Hong Kong, they come at a time when there's a lot of discussion about government beginning to be too big for its britches.
And don't forget the FBI raids and the ATF raids on Gibson Guitar and other people. Look, this is a very dangerous time. This president is getting away with murder. This is the most unbelievable situation. Now, you asked me a specific question about the NSA leak. That's an easy one. What is more complicated, and I think more dangerous, is what you have just said, Brian. There is a pattern of big government snooping and overreaching and illegality. And the president believes that he is untouchable. The press has made him believe that he can do anything he wants. He has the handmaidens up on Capitol Hill, where the Democrats control the Senate, and the Democrats in the House do nothing but act out partisan politics to obstruct legitimate congressional investigations. Best example, Elijah Cummings, who has become a hack, a Democratic hack. That performance yesterday on national television, where he claimed that the IRS investigation is over because he was quoting a conservative Republican mid-level employee in Cincinnati, is a joke and is an example of why he has become the classic Democratic apparatchik from Maryland. All they do is follow orders from the leader. The president is now out of control, and Congress should do its job. I know the House will. I have grave doubts about the Senate because Dianne Feinstein has absolutely lost it as the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Absolutely lost it.
Well, Joe DiGenova, that Elijah Cummings audio from yesterday, we actually played it earlier in the show, and we're going to revisit it at 8:05. It really was remarkable, and we're going to open it up to the listeners for that one as well. Let me ask you really, we only got 30 seconds, but as former Attorney General for the District of Columbia, two quick stories that hit last week. Michael Brown is pleading guilty to in a federal court for bribery, and Marion Barry got gifts from two different D.C. contractors. Is it ever going to change here?
No, because you have a one-party system. The political system is immature, and it is an embarrassment to the nation and the world that the nation's capital is run by people who are so incompetent and corrupt that even the Washington Post editorial board can't stand it anymore.
All right, Joe DiGenova. Thanks for joining us as always, Joe.
Thanks.